My name is Haruna Kanavi, Executive Secretary of the Independent Media Council of Uganda, which is the self-regulatory media body in this country. I am happy to yet again mark the World Press Freedom Day with my colleagues in Uganda. But as we mark this day and we remind ourselves of the importance of a free press, we should also keep in mind that responsible journalism is very important. Responsible in a sense that we always remind ourselves of the professional code of conduct, whatever circumstances we find ourselves in.
But the status of media rights in the country is still appalling because of the legislative frameworks that are very controlling and restrictive than being facilitative. You have UCC, which is the regulatory body that only comes out to curtail media freedoms rather than facilitating the media to grow. You have lots of harassment and intimidation. There is a lot of hate speech against the media in this country, especially by leaders, mainly the politicians. You have a lot of censorship, self-censorship within the media. Many media houses now fear to handle very critical stories for fear of reprisals. And that happens to the detriment of freedom of expression and the media, and even at the expense of the public that are the consumers of this information. So we are not at ease, much as international reports have said that we are partly free, but even that little degree of freedom only favors you when you're doing less of critical stories or you're not involved in investigative journalism or political reporting.
The status of press freedom today is not encouraging at all. Why? Because we are seeing state institutions, especially police, in connivence with the judiciary, working to undermine and suppress our rights. Recently, police filed a petition which was heard and also allowed by the judiciary to stop chimp reports and other media institutions from covering the investigation into the murder of a high-ranking officer. We think this was not the right thing to do. It infringed on our rights. It sets a very dangerous precedent for the media, and we think such things should not be tolerated.
My name is Andrew Rwanga, a journalist. I was assaulted by a police officer while I was carrying out my duty. From that day of 12th of Jan 2015, my life has never been the same again. I've gone through a number of operations. I've gone through lots of treatment, and when it came to seeking justice for the person who had crippled me, I was so disappointed in court rulings who gave this police officer a very light sentence of a fine of 1 million and 5 million to meet my medical expenses, of which I clearly told court that my medical expenses were more than $65,000 US. To me, it didn't serve any justice or anything of close to justice. I was betrayed by the courts because I believe I gave court tangible evidence.
We do work under difficult situations as Ugandan journalists. I may not necessarily have to experience that difficulty, but when my colleagues in the industry, in the fraternity, are going through difficulties, then definitely it affects the overall functioning and well-being of the entire industry. When you hear that a colleague has been kidnapped for expressing their views about an issue they are passionate about, that definitely sends a message to the rest of us. And definitely we are forced to operate under this cloud of uncertainty and a lot of fear, because you don't know who is going to be next and how bad things will get.
As a journalist who has taken more than 15 years in this field, I feel Uganda has gone a little bit ahead in terms of press freedom, but we are still struggling because there are many things that are happening. If I can give my example, as Agnes Nanduta, I have been in Parliament for 15 consecutive years reporting about Parliament with a lot of experience. And I was unveiling a lot of stories about the scandals in Parliament, about the scandals about ministers, about MPs. But I was surprised for them when they come up with it's not even a law, but it's just a regulation that every journalist who reports at Parliament should have a degree, which I actually didn't have. But to my surprise, they were just planning to get me out of Parliament because of my critical reporting. How did I discover that? We were a number of people who were very critical. I will give an example of Yasin Bugera of Monitor. I will give an example of Jingo Francis of NTV. They have degrees, but they were bundled up with me of being critical of what Parliament does.
You know, freedom is a very interesting thing, because as a journalist, I want to be able to tell a story because it's right, because it's factual, because it's objective. The challenge we face is that sometimes people want you to say the things they want to hear. So you cannot, as a journalist, divorce yourself from the truth because you want to tell the story a certain way, because some people want you to say it that way. And this, of course, we see it with the state a lot, because there's a certain line they want you to toe, which usually, of course, is very biased towards them. I can't do that because I'm a journalist, and I pray that this Press Freedom Day reflects just that a journalist will be allowed to do what they're supposed to do, given the space they're supposed to do that, whether online, whether on print, whether in print, whether on TV, that we shall be able to express ourselves because it is the truth and because it matters to the public that we serve. Of course, the other issue is that as a female journalist, my duty, I'm a very passionate journalist, very ambitious. I want to do earth-shattering stories. I want to do earth-breaking stories. And those stories you can only get in the field. Sometimes there are war zones, sometimes there are conflict areas. But then there's this whole stereotype that women cannot do certain things.
I get worried by the worsening incidents, especially in perpetrated by the security forces, most especially the police, that affect the press freedom in Uganda. I think according to statistics, incidents of journalists being beaten up while on duty, especially by the police, have increased. And I think that's not a good thing for press freedom.
Media freedom is important, obviously, because open societies, democratic societies, and Uganda claims to be an open democratic society, require that we have media freedom, require that we have easy access to information, because that is how people get to know what's going on, what their government is up to, and that's how then they get to ask the questions and hopefully get answers. And that sort of participation is really at the heart of democracy, when people engage with those that they elect. And we also know that a lot of societies that have developed, a lot of societies that claim to be democratic, also societies that have free media. So free media and democracy are very central. We also know, for example, that states or countries that are less corrupt have little corruption going, say, by Transparency International rankings. Also those societies that have a free media, because a free media helps to expose corruption, abuse of office, and therefore people in authority become much more conscious, and that consciousness then prevents them from engaging in corrupt activities. So whichever way you look at it, freedom of the media and freedom of expression are crucially important. Now, obviously in Uganda right now there is the question of use of obscene language. Of course I'm referring to the Stella Nyanzi issue. But I think that shouldn't be an issue of the state, of the police, of the judiciary. I think that matter should be left to society, to the family of Dr. Nyanzi, to her friends, to her church, to say, we think you're using, language that is unbecoming. And so I think that is much more effective sanction than the state wasting a lot of resources, keeping her in jail, prosecuting her. I think that's not the way to go.